have you ever stopped to think, really think, about how countries that are, well, often at odds, manage to share something absolutely essential, like a huge river?
It seems pretty unlikely sometimes, doesn't it? Especially with high tensions.
Exactly. But some deals, some agreements, they actually manage to stick around, even through wars. It's quite remarkable.
It really is.
So today we're going to dive deep into one of these extraordinary cases, the Indus Water Treaty.
Ah, yes, the IWT.
That's the one. A huge water-sharing agreement between India and Pakistan,
Yeah.
two nations with a famously complex relationship.
That's putting it mildly.
So our mission here in this deep dive is to really unpack how this thing worked, what made it tick for so long, and crucially, what challenges is it facing now? Because it was seen as this gold standard, this global model. We've got some great sources to dig into.
And it's such a vital topic.
Yeah.
Because these shared water resources, like the Indus system, there's so often flashpoints, real sources of conflict.
Especially in that region.
Absolutely. Water is life. Right? For farming, for communities, it's fundamental. And the IWT signed way back on September 19th, 1960.
With the World Bank playing mediator.
Exactly. Brokered by the World Bank. It was specifically designed to head off those disputes. And, for a very long time, it actually did.
It really did. And to get why it was such a big deal, we kind of have to rewind, don't we?
Definitely. Back to the partition.
Right after the partition of India in 1947, suddenly you've got this massive river, the Indus, flowing through two brand new countries often hostile to each other.
An immediate potential crisis point.
For sure. And our sources point to this key moment in 1948. India apparently temporarily stopped the water flow to Pakistan.
Yes, that event really escalated things.
It hammered home just how urgent a solution was needed. I mean, it wasn't just about canals. It could have sparked a much bigger fight. It forced them, really, to figure out how to cooperate on this.
It did. That blockage made it crystal clear they couldn't just sort it out between themselves. They needed help, international mediation.
Which is where the World Bank comes in again.
Right. And what's fascinating here, truly fascinating, is that their involvement kicked off 9 years. 9 years of negotiations.
Wow, 9 years. That's persistence.
It really is. Think about it. A decade almost of talks between these two nations carrying so much baggage, so much mistrust.
Must have been incredibly difficult.
Oh, absolutely. Our sources mentioned the times the whole thing nearly fell apart over technical details. Arguments about flow rates, specific canal usage, things like that.
Saved by last-minute compromises, I bet.
Exactly. And just the sheer determination to avoid something worse. It really shows how complex, but also how vital this agreement was.
And then finally, after all that effort, they signed.
Yes. A huge moment.
Prime Minister Nehru for India, President Ayub Khan for Pakistan.
Yeah.
In Karachi, it wasn't just about water. It felt like proof that diplomacy could work even in the toughest spots.
A real landmark achievement.
And our sources really stress this. The fact they managed to negotiate something so fundamental between such rivals, it became a kind of model, didn't it?
It did. A blueprint almost for managing resource conflicts elsewhere. And arguably, it prevented bigger fights down the line for decades.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanics, the interesting part. How did they actually divide up the water? Given all that mistrust you mentioned, how did they start?
Well, it was actually quite an ingenious approach. The treaty covers 6 main rivers in the Indus Basin.
6 rivers.
Okay, and to make it manageable, to draw clear lines, they split them into 2 groups. The eastern rivers and the western rivers.
A geographical split. Makes sense.
It was strategic. It created these distinct zones of control, essentially.
Got it. And the allocation itself was pretty straightforward on paper, wasn't it?
Surprisingly clear, yeah. The eastern rivers, the Ravi, Beas, and Sutlej, those were allocated pretty much exclusively to India.
Okay, India gets the eastern 3.
And the western rivers, the big ones, the Indus itself, the Jhelum and the Chenab, were allocated primarily for Pakistan's unrestricted use.
So Pakistan gets the western 3. That seems, balanced on the surface. 3 each.
Ah, but that's where the numbers come in. When you look at the actual volume of water.
Right, the flow.
Exactly. India ended up with rights to about 20% of the total water in the basin. Pakistan got the remaining 80%.
80%? Wow, that's not balanced at all. That heavily favors Pakistan.
Massively favors Pakistan, the downstream country. And our sources suggest this wasn't an accident. This imbalance, this 80-20 split, was a really key strategic move.
How so?
By giving Pakistan the vast majority of the water, guaranteeing its agricultural lifeline, India essentially bought Pakistan's long-term buy-in to the treaty. It decoupled the water issue, to a large extent, from all the other political problems. A very far-sighted concession, really.
That's a fascinating point. So Pakistan gets a lion's share, but India wasn't completely blocked from the Western rivers.
No, not completely. The treaty allowed India some specific uses of the Western River waters. Things like domestic use, some limited irrigation,
Okay.
and importantly, generating hydroelectric power. But, and this is the big cut,
There's always a catch.
right? These uses couldn't interfere with Pakistan's supply. They couldn't significantly restrict the flow downstream to Pakistan. That was absolutely critical.
And there was a transition period too, right? India had to keep supplying some water initially.
Yes, that's right. For a set period, India had to ensure flows continued, while Pakistan built the dams and canals needed to fully utilize the western rivers allocated to it. Again, very practical planning to avoid immediate chaos.
Okay, so they designed this incredibly detailed, strategically clever agreement. But, a treaty on paper is one thing. Making it actually function day to day, year after year for over 60 years, that's another challenge entirely.
Absolutely, sticking power is key.
So how did they make sure it didn't just gather dust? They set up an institution, didn't they?
They did. The Permanent Indus Commission, or PIC. This is really the engine room of the treaty.
The PIC. And this is like a joint committee.
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
It has commissioners from both India and Pakistan. And crucially, they have to meet regularly, at least once a year, alternating between countries.
And what do they do in these meetings? Just chat about the weather?
Huh? Well, maybe sometimes. But their main job is serious. They exchange hydrological data, river flows, rainfall, that sort of thing. They check that both sides are following the treaty rules.
Okay. Oversight.
And they try to resolve any minor disagreements or questions that pop up. It's meant to be this constant channel for communication, nip problems in the bud.
It sounds almost mundane, but vital.
That's exactly it. It's the boring but brilliant part that keeps the whole thing ticking over. Preventative diplomacy in action.
But what if a dispute was too big for the commission? What if they couldn't agree?
Good question. The treaty foresaw that possibility. It set up a really robust three-step process for resolving bigger disputes.
3 steps.
First, try the commission, the PIC.
Yeah.
If they deadlock,
Step 2.
step 2 is to appoint a neutral expert. Basically, an independent technical expert agreed on by both sides to look at this specific issue.
Like an arbitrator, but focused on the technical side.
Exactly. And if even that doesn't resolve it, or if the issue is more about legal interpretation than technical facts,
Step 3.
then it can go to a full court of arbitration, an international tribunal set up specifically for the dispute under the treaty's rules.
Wow, so multiple layers of safety nets.
Precisely. Our sources really highlight how this structured, impartial process was key. It gave both sides a way to air grievances and seek resolution without, resorting to threats or worse.
Looking back now, the overall impact seems pretty undeniable, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
For more than 60 years, think about it. India and Pakistan have fought actual wars in that time. Multiple crises, constant tension.
Yet the water kept flowing, largely according to the treaty.
It's why it became this global benchmark, right? A textbook example of how enemies can cooperate on shared resources if the framework is right. It fostered dialogue, created this legal structure.
It truly did. A remarkable example of resilience. But, and there's always a but.
Things change. Even the strongest models face new pressures.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture today, the treaty, while resilient, hasn't been immune. We've definitely seen more friction in recent years.
Over what specifically?
Mostly over new hydroelectric projects. India wants to build more dams on the western rivers, allowed under the treaty for power generation, as we discussed.
But Pakistan objects.
Pakistan often objects, arguing the designs might interfere with their water flow, violating the treaty terms. There have been several high-profile disputes taken through the resolution mechanisms.
And environmental concerns, too. Climate change must be a factor.
A huge factor. Changing rainfall patterns, glacier melt affecting river flows. It adds a whole new layer of complexity and potential stress to managing the Indus Basin waters. These were sort of the warning signs, maybe, the first real strains on the agreement's durability.
And then came something much more dramatic. Our sources point to this really critical event, April 2025. India temporarily suspended the treaty.
Yes, that was unprecedented.
It wasn't just a dispute within the rules, it was stepping outside them. It followed a terrorist attack, security concerns were cited.
It had massively ramped up tensions. But critically, it also directly impacted the water flows.
This was huge, wasn't it? It shook that whole idea of the treaty being untouchable. How did that suspension actually play out? What happened on the ground?
Well, the immediate effect was uncertainty, panic almost, especially downstream in Pakistan. Farmers, officials, suddenly the reliability of their main water source was in question.
Even if it was temporary.
Even temporary. The act itself was the shock. It showed that the treaty, this thing everyone assumed was sacrosanct, could actually be used as leverage, or at least be sidelined, in a major security crisis.
So it wasn't handled through the PIC or a neutral expert.
No, not at all. This was unilateral action linked to security, completely outside the established dispute framework. And that's what really challenged the perception of the IWT as this forever deal. It showed its vulnerability to extreme political pressure. A new, uncomfortable variable was introduced.
So, wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you listening to this? What's the takeaway?
Well, I think
The Indus Water Treaty, it really stands out, doesn't it? As this rare example of long-term cooperation between rivals. It shows that negotiation, compromise, it can work, even with something as vital as water, even with deep friction.
absolutely. Its longevity, surviving all those conflicts, it's a powerful lesson. Strategic compromise can pay off.
But it's not unbreakable.
No. And that's the other key takeaway, especially after recent events. Despite the tensions, despite that temporary suspension, the treaty is still fundamentally essential. Millions depend on it.
Still relevant.
Hugely relevant. And it still offers lessons for water diplomacy worldwide. But it also reminds us that these agreements aren't static. They need constant attention, adaptation, and ultimately the political will from both sides to keep them working.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. Considering its decades of success, its clever design, what core principles from the Indus Water Treaty could still help us manage shared resources today? But also, what does that temporary suspension in 2025 tell us about how resilient these kinds of agreements really are when things get truly heated in our modern world?